Thanks so much for coming to our panel. I know we're competing with so many other ones, but it's great to see a lot of people here. This panel will focus on exploring the evolving landscapes of multi-stakeholder governance in the digital age, with a focus on the outcomes of the WSIS 2020 and ensuring that all communities, including marginalized communities, persons with disabilities, and young adults and children are active participants in shaping the future of the IGF. So there's several different dynamic coalitions here, and we also have a booth in the main area where you could pick up information about the booth and about all of our DCs that are there. So we have, right here, we have the Dynamic Coalition on Accessibility and Disability, which focuses on the future of multi-stakeholder governance and making sure that it's inclusive not only in principle but in practice. We also have the Dynamic Coalition on core internet values, as well as the Dynamic Coalition on intergenerational planets, the Dynamic Coalition on security and stability, the Dynamic Coalitions on schools and internet governance, as well as the Dynamic Coalition on rights of children. So we have all of these coalitions here, and we're going to start first with the Dynamic Coalition on Accessibility and Disability. And this is Dr. Mohammed Shabir. He, along with myself, are the co-coordinators of our Dynamic Coalition. So let me, without bring it over to Dr. Shabir.
Thank you very much, Judith. Thank you for giving the opportunity, and my colleagues for being at this table to discuss the future of multi-stakeholder governance. From the perspective of Dynamic Coalition on Accessibility and Disability, I would have a couple of points to make in the initial intervention, and then we can follow those points in the interactive discussion. The first thing is that there are a number of instruments at the high level as well as regional and national level that talk about inclusivity, accessibility, and rights of persons with disabilities in the digital spaces. These range from, at the top of all these instruments sits the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which most of the governments by now have not just signed but ratified. Then we have WSIS 20+, which is being reviewed this year. That could be, that also talks about inclusivity. We have the Global Digital Compact, where inclusivity for persons with disabilities is also referred. And then we have Digital Inclusion Strategy by the UN Secretary General, where inclusivity is talked about. While this year is very important, as we all know, will be not only deciding the future of internet governance, but we will also be deciding that how the future of multi-stakeholder governance should be shaping up. So inclusion of persons with disabilities in the decision-making, as we discussed in the session on Beyond Tokenism, the inclusion of persons with disabilities in internet governance. This was one of the sessions where we talked about different ways and strategies that can be implemented in the way of involving persons with disabilities in further sessions. We, as Dynamic Coalitions, we also organized 3 key sessions in different clusters. I won't go into the details, but yesterday in Hall 5, we discussed about capacities and how principle-based models can be made inclusive, and it ensure that persons with disabilities are included in the decision-making of the future. The question here arises, why do we include persons with disabilities, whereas we have so many people who could be deciding the future of digital governance, and they have been deciding it arguably, and it has been functioning. As a coordinator of the Dynamic Coalition on Accessibility and Disability, I would say it might be functioning. The system might be functioning for some, but there is a very huge number of population. That WHO would state that it is about 15 or 16% of the world population. Which, considering the total world population levels at 8 or 9 billion, would be equal to the total population of the country, which is India or China. So a huge number of population is there who are not benefiting or meaningfully benefiting from the processes or the systems that our so-called perfect technologists, policymakers have evolved. Therefore, when Dynamic Coalition on Accessibility and Disability comes on the stage and says that if you have not been able to evolve the perfect systems, perhaps this was because you had not the right people at the decision-making tables when you were making the decisions about the future of the internet. So it's high time that while we evolve the future systems now, we include persons with disabilities into those decision-making. So I stop here, and we can discuss this further. Judas, over to you. Thank you.
Thanks so much for this. I'm going to next turn to my candidate on my left, Rajendra, with the DC economy.
Thank you, Judith. And this is a very important topic from the governance standpoint. You know that the global economy is digital, but still 1/3 of the people are still not connected to the internet. Which brings me to the very important point that the world GDP was 110 trillion last year. It could be 150 trillion. Just think how much difference it would make to the economy. And which brings a big question to the multi-stakeholder governance model we have. The empty seat here is symbolic. There are gaps. And these gaps are that our multi-stakeholder governance model is reactive, not proactive. And still knowing well that people are not connected, we have not been able to. Every year we come and see that the 2.7 billion people not connected become 2.6 billion. At this pace, it will take more than a decade for us to connect the people. I think when we as the IGF put the tagline of internet we also want everyone to be connected to internet. I think there should be a study that think tanks should do, is the internet usage per capita and the GDP per capita. I would think that would be a good correlation. And we have to somehow look at not the multi-stakeholder governance per se, but the governance of multi-stakeholder governance. How do we govern it? What kind of issues we prioritize? I think overly we are prioritizing AI over access of internet, and not having internet itself is a disability, I would say. So I think the multi-stakeholder governance models need to reset a button to look at various dimensions and KPIs of what the governance should look like, what we should deliver before the end of the decade when the SDGs come to an end by 2030. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Dr. Rajendra, for this. Next, as time is very moving quickly, we're going to move to my right, and we're going to hear from Tatvik Grigorian from UNESCO.
Thanks very much. I'm here from UNESCO I represent the Dynamic Coalition on Internet Universality Indicators. And as we talk about multi-stakeholderism, these indicators are rooted in multi-stakeholder approach. These are basically indicators that help countries assess their internet performance against the pillars of human rights, openness and accessibility, and multi-stakeholder governance, and cross-cutting issues such as gender equality, safety and security online, AI, and the environment. So I mentioned the multi-stakeholder governance, which is one of the key pillars of these indicators, hence also very much in line with the work that the Dynamic Coalition does. For us, multi-stakeholder participation and engagement and governance of the digital environment is not just a principle, but also at UNESCO, it is at the heart of our actions too, our activities. For example, if I speak within the scope of the Dynamic Coalition on this Internet Universality indicators, first step that we do after there's an agreement to do these assessments, we establish a multi-stakeholder advisory board that steers the entire process, that is providing input to these national voluntary assessment reports, and then validates the outcomes of the assessments and also the recommendations that we put forward to support the countries improve their digital environment. And then we encourage this maintenance of the multi-stakeholder advisory board also in carrying forward and implementing these policy recommendations. So we very much not only encourage it in principle, but we also facilitate this in action and convene these multi-stakeholder dialogues in this scope and ensure that every stakeholder group has a say around the table on these matters. This is just one example of, and as we speak within this scope of dynamic coalitions, of our work where we promote and foster multi-stakeholder engagement to the internet governance, but it is very much rooted in all of our activities. I'll stop here. If any questions, happy to take them. Thank you.
Thanks so much. We'll do questions and answers later, but want to make sure we have enough time for the panelists to make their quick statements. So I'll next go to Olivia Crepin-Laban for the DC on core internet values.
Yeah, thank you very much, Judith. Olivier Crepin-Laban speaking, and I'm here to speak to you about the core internet values and the work of the Dynamic Coalition. So what are the core internet values? They comprise the technical characteristics, technical architectural values by which the internet is built and evolves, and derives what can be called the social, or in other words, the universal values, which we've heard about just a moment ago, that emerge from the way that the internet works. The internet is a global medium open to all, regardless of geography or nationality. It's interoperable because it's a network of networks. It doesn't rely on a single application. It relies on open protocols like TCP/IP, like BGP. It's free of any centralized control, except for the needed coordination for the domain name system, the addressing, if you want, of the internet and the IP addresses. It's end-to-end, so the traffic goes from one end of the network to the other end of the network unhindered. It's user-centric, so users are able to basically choose what type of traffic they want to send through, what type of information they want to send through. They have full control over what they send and receive. And of course, it's robust and it's reliable. But of course, that was a while ago when the internet was created. A number of these values are being eroded. Things are changing on the internet. And so we're tracking the change that we're seeing happening on the internet. Earlier this week, on Wednesday, we had a workshop that also looked at artificial intelligence, AI, and tried to see if we could apply core internet values and derive from that some AI values. Very interesting discussion. It was very well attended. But one thing that did come out of the discussion was that the dynamic coalitions around this table, and in fact the ones that were in the other workshops, are all working sometimes on specific points that go on top of the core internet values. You've got the internet as the base, and other work grafts on the top of that. And so one of the things that my colleagues are not aware of now, one of the action items, is that we will be working with all of the different dynamic coalitions one-on-one and offering a partnership to try and see what core internet values relate to their work and how we can help defend their work through the core internet values. I hope it's a bit helpful, but I'll be happy to answer questions later. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Olivier, and thanks for sticking to your time, 'cause time is always not our friend here. Next, I will go to Avri Doria, who's going to speak for the Schools of Internet Governance.
Thank you.
Avri.
Thank you, Judith, and thank you for chairing this session. My name is Avri Doria, and I coordinate the Dynamic Coalition on Schools and Internet Governance. We do a couple things. First of all, there are many schools that have sprung up around the world over, I guess, the last decade. Each one of them is a bottom-up affair. So what the Dynamic Coalition tries to do at the very top level is sort of offer materials, offer ways to look at things. We have developed a curriculum in the past that currently needs to be updated with all the new things that he's been talking about. We're currently working on a document, for example, on how to sustain a school. And it's once you found one and you get some money and you have all the enthusiasm of having created one, comes year 3 and year 4, and how do you keep the thing running? So we're doing that, and it's a very interesting exercise because that's done differently in different places in the world. Depends on how you've gone. So that's one of the things that the Dynamic Coalition does. The schools themselves basically do several things. One, they do coursework, and they look at the various topics, whether it's AI, whether it's how IP works, whether it's what the political dimensions of schools are, etc. So that's one of the aspects of schools. The other aspects of schools that we help work on is what we call practica. And we have practicums where you look around the multi-stakeholder world and you find there are some of us that are constantly talking, constantly participating. The, what do we call but anyhow, the regular victims or the regular, but most people sit there quietly, and it comes from, at least it seems to come from, they never had a place to practice. They never had a place to sort of figure out how to behave, how to interject themselves. To some of us, it comes natural. To many, it doesn't. So a lot of these practica are there. The third thing that we focus on is actually what one could call it the theory of multi-stakeholderism, or the theory of multi-stakeholder models. A couple years ago, and it may even be true for many now, people thought there was one multi-stakeholder model. It was the IGF model. Or maybe there was one multi-stakeholder model, and it was the ICANN model, or maybe there was one. And then basically, so we started looking at how you come down to the next level of what does it involve to have a multi-stakeholder model? Are there levels of maturity in a multi-stakeholder model? How do you progress in developing a multi-stakeholder model? So that, in a very quick, hand-wavy manner, is sort of what the schools on internet governance are about, and always happy to talk about it infinitely.
Thanks so much, Avri, and thanks for sticking to your time. Next, we'll go to Roberto Gaetano. He's with the DC of Interplanetary Networks, and they are doing internet in the space.
Thank you. Thank you, Judith. Yes, the DC on Interplanetary Networks, as the name suggests, is dealing with communication, interplanetary communication. Why is this different from the regular internet on Earth? That is because for the distances in space that create delays in the communication, and also the fact that we have widely moving nodes that can create interruptions in the communication. So basically, long story short, we have to use a different protocol that is delay and fault tolerance. So there will be some differences versus the regular internet. Another question is now that the way that interplanetary communication develops with the launch of space missions, for instance, with the possibility of communication to outer space and so on. Basically, what we have right now is a situation in which telecommunication operators or organization and organizations that are involved with launch of space vessels, NASA, for instance, just to name one. Those are the ones who are currently shaping up this scenario. So the problem is, having also learned the lesson from the regular internet, where we had a bit in a hurry and under pressure had to develop a governance model in order to ensure that all interested stakeholders have a place in the table and and can discuss how to govern the internet. In the same way, we believe that we need to develop and deploy an interplanetary internet governance model. And for instance, in these days we are discussing and we are thinking of using, and that gives me the possibility to advertise this booklet, which is the translation in several languages of the Sao Paulo Declaration of Net Mundial Plus 10. We are going to be using this to develop with the community a governance model that is really multi-stakeholder, that will ensure that also stakeholders that are not completely aware of the development of the interplanetary networks, like, for instance, civil society or users that will be impacted, can get into the process early, so that their interests and needs are represented. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Roberto. The last panelist we have here is Wild Dinatris, and he is no, you're not on it? Okay. So then we'll go to panelists of the DC Child Online Protection. Oh,
Thank you, Judith, for giving me the floor, although I was not supposed to be a panelist, but I had prepared to give some input to this session, so very welcome. When it comes to multi-stakeholder collaboration, of course, from the Dynamic Coalition on Children's Rights in the digital environment, I need to refer to young people. And I really appreciate that we had many people around here at the IGF, many young people. We have the Dynamic Teen Coalition that was engaged in our work, and we also have the Dynamic Coalition, the Youth Coalition, let me say it in that way. I take the opportunity to refer to the General Comment number 25 on children's rights in the digital environment, because it has a whole chapter on the respect for the views of the child. And let me just quote. We did a child participation worldwide in preparation of the General Comment number 25. And there, the over 700 children in various languages reported that the digital environment afforded them crucial opportunities for their voices to be heard in matters that affect them. And I do think that we cannot deny, with 1/3 of all internet users worldwide are under the age of 18, though it means that they are a child in the sense of the Convention on the Rights of the Child, that we have not only give them a voice, but hear their voices and respect their views in regard of internet governance. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks so much. And Yuta is also, along with Marcus, the co-chairs of the Dynamic Coalition Coordinating Group of all different 30 DCs. So now we'll move to the next step. Well, okay, Wout wants to, in the end, he decided he wanted to speak.
Great.
Is it on? Yes. My apologies. I was not aware that I was on the list because I had not submitted myself, but I can, of course, speak a little bit. My name is Wouter Natris, and I represent the Dynamic Coalition on Internet Standards, Security and Safety here at the IGF, and we just produced our report on post-quantum cryptography this morning, and it landed really successfully well, I think, with some of the people in the room, so that's good to notice. But let me reflect on the future of multi-stakeholderism that we're discussing. And what we've been doing as dynamic coalitions as a group in the past, maybe 3 years by now, but certainly 2.5, is try to organize ourselves and get ourselves better known so that people in the IGF environment understand better what we as dynamic coalitions are doing. And I think that from the way that people within the community look at us at this moment is different than it was 3 years ago, because I ran into people even on the MAG who were not even aware that dynamic coalitions existed, or let alone what they did. And I think that has changed. The fact that we are now reported on, for example, by the Diplo Foundation, that was not happening 2 years ago, last year, is progress. And we have 1.5 years probably before the next IGF. And how will dynamic coalitions present themselves in November or December 2026 when there is a new IGF anywhere in the world? We don't know yet. I think that that is where we can make the next step, and we have time to make the next step. So what I'm advocating is that what we've managed to do with the DC clustering, it also brings together overarching themes. We notice that we start working on this, we're sort of working on the same topic from a different angle. And that allows us to make better messages and perhaps common messages, like what you invited us to do. And thank you for that, Olivier. But also I think that we need to have a bigger voice in the future. And what I would suggest that we try to advocate is that we have a spot in the MAG to make sure that the integration of our work becomes better known within the process, so that the clustering we have now become part of the themes. And that is something that has nothing to do with the workshop program, but it has something to do with getting the messages across of our work that we do during the whole year across in a far better and integrated way. And that is something that we can discuss and organize and see if the other dynamic coalitions agree on. But it's something that I would advocate, to have a voice in the MAG so that we're all at the same level and not that we're always somewhere as an appendix on the side. And I think that would make multi-stakeholder and integrated governance far better, stronger, and more influential in the future. So let me stop there, and thank you for the opportunity, Judith.
Thank you so much, Wout. And I'll go over to Marcus for a comment.
Yes, thank you, Judith. And you called me co-chair with Utah of the coordination group. Actually, we call ourselves co-facilitators. Sounds less important than co-chairs. No, I had very much support Wout's comments. We really have come a long way, and I think by clustering and having also the main session, we have a bigger impact. Now, whether or not a seat on the MAG will make that much difference, I'm not necessarily convinced, but we have a MAG liaison and we need to use this better, but let's park that discussion. We can have it among ourselves. I was just going to make a minor point listening to Utah, and she pointed out that legally speaking, somebody under 18 is a child, which obviously doesn't make much sense. And I make myself here the spokesman of the Teens Dynamic Coalition, who actually put forward a quite thoughtful paper saying we need to look at the ages in a different way. The UN category is youth is 18 to 35, and to be frank, a 35-year-old is a very mature youth. And it doesn't make much sense, but we cannot change something that's enshrined in a General Assembly resolution. But we can apply it maybe with more flexibility. And the Dynamic Teen Coalition, they suggest below 12, these are children, and they fall in the category where we have to look after them. Whereas from 13 to 18, they are teenagers. Well, till 19, they are teenagers, but in most countries, when you're 18, you're adult. So we have different rights and responsibilities. And then they also go on, say, they are young adults, young professionals, they're people mid-career, and they are the oldies who maybe can take on a different role as mentoring. And I actually like this idea of looking at the age categories with a fresh eye. But we will not be able to change General Assembly resolutions, but I think the teens have made themselves heard, and Amrit was in various sessions, and he has my admiration. At his age, I would not have been able to argue so effectively and coherently. So these are my quick comments on this matter, but Jutta may have more comments because she's a professional dealing with children and children's rights. Thank you for listening.
Yes, thank you, Markus. I just wanted to get into that because isn't it also due to the opportunities that the digital environment opens up for children that they are now in this position? Because otherwise, like those teens that are under the age of 18, they could only have come to the internet accompanied by adults, that like we had in several years earlier on in the internet governance community. But now, with all these digital opportunities, they can take part via Zoom, for example. They can raise their voice. They can make them heard themselves. So kind of, the internet with the World Wide Web came up in 1989. That was the same year that the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child came up. So we have kind of parallel developments, and I'm pretty sure they are interrelated with each other. The digital technologies have opened up for children's evolving capacities, evolving in a certainly changed way than it was beforehand.
Thanks so much, Jutta. And this will also go out to our next segment, which is some policy questions.
Can I ask a question? If I can, I'd like to just add one thought to that. One, this is one reason why the DCs, when they started out, sort of declared a degree of independence from the MAG and the UN and its strictures, so that we wouldn't necessarily be as bound by all the UN, edicts, such as we could decide what we wanted in terms of how we were doing things and what. And two, as a street kid at 16, if anybody had told me I was a child, there would have been a battle.
But it's only words.
Yeah. No, this also leads us directly into our policy question of what policies are important in the process of enabling multi-stakeholder practices. You touched on the idea of the digital ideas that we can now get the youth to engage themselves, and they don't have to come with an adult or the other stuff. The Teen Coalition goes on the calls in the early morning and the early evening, and so they're very active. But, Vajendra, I know you wanted to make a comment on.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what Marcus said, that as what I have experienced over the decades, the DCs, I mean, this is the best model for looking at the multi-stakeholder governance. I think, as Avri said, independent, flexible. I have not come across any time when anyone made a suggestion, it was thwarted or debated. Anything good, immediately accepted and acted upon. So I would actually congratulate those who facilitate the dynamic coalitions within the IGF and the Secretariat for keeping that spirit alive of change and hope along with continuity. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks so much. Yeah, so who wants to, Avri, do you want to talk about that question of policies that are important in the process of enabling multi-stakeholder?
Certainly. I'm always willing to talk about just about any topic, but the policies, certainly within the dynamic coalitions, it's very important that we be open and accept the whole notion that bottom up these things are dealt. Thank you for being here, Marcus. You know,
Bottom up.
bottom up. Thank you very much for reminding me where I was. But basically, that becomes a very important part because, as I was saying before, when the dynamic coalitions get constrained into a certain rules, a certain box, a certain structure, is when we find that we can't be all that dynamic. You know, having the basic rules that we have to be open, that we have to have a mailing list, that we have to be coalitions, which means we have to have people from the many stakeholder groups, is a very basic set of requirements. But beyond that, as multi-stakeholder models develop, as we get beyond thinking of there being a single model, a single way to do things, it really is in the dynamic coalitions that you sort of have the crucible where you can try things, you can fail, you can come, you can succeed, and such, that becomes more and more a problem as things start to have the blessing of the top down. Part of the problem with the IGF is its top-down nature. Dynamic coalitions are the one place where we get to experiment with sort of the other half of what it means to be multi-stakeholder, bottom-up multi-stakeholder models. Thanks.
Thanks so much. Do any other coalitions want to mention something? Otherwise, we'll go to the next question. Okay, so the next question is, how can multi-stakeholder models be further developed to make them more inclusive and accessible? And I'll point from my cue to Dr. Shabir to talk about that.
Thank you very much for that. And I've been listening to my fellow DC representatives talk about different aspects, and I've been thinking that how best we can evolve this multi-stakeholder model that we have going up and running. And I reflected upon the suggestion that came out from Wout and then the discussion by Avery on the having a voice or space on the MAG by the DCs. And I would, for one, from the perspective of DCAD, whereas I would want the multi-stakeholder model as it exists today to evolve that to include the voice of persons with disabilities on the MAG. Why so? Because this is the largest minority that is just being made into a checkbox under the diversity umbrella. It should not be that. On the other hand, as the coordinator of Dynamic Coalition on Accessibility and Disability and one of the oldest dynamic coalitions in existence, I would argue for the argument that Avery has put forward. And that is, we must guard the system that we have here within the dynamic coalitions, and that is bottom-up multi-stakeholder. We, as the coordinators of the dynamic coalitions, we are not the chairs who would give directions from the top to be implemented. We facilitate the work of the coalitions. As Marcus very rightly said, that they are, Marcus and Utah are preferred to be recognized as facilitators of the work, because our job is not to give directions. Our job is to give guidance, to provide resources, and to facilitate the work that community wants from us. And in that, I just was thinking that whether teens, I hear Amrit and I am really impressed by his prowess and his argumentation at this age. But when I think of the other side of the teens with disabilities, those who do not have the right opportunities, then I need to consider that that multi-stakeholder model, so-called, needs to evolve, and it needs to be multi-stakeholder in true sense and not just be some checkboxes here and there. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Dr. Shabir. I'll go to Roberto Gaetano as he has some input.
Yes, Roberto Gaetano, DC Interplanetary. I have two comments on this. The first is once the former CEO of ICANN said a multi-stakeholder model has to be global and equal. And I think that this is a very, very important. We cannot just have a vague representation of the stakeholders, but the model has to be global in the sense that those stakeholders have to represent different geopolitical situations, and equal. The stakeholder groups have to participate on equal footing. I think that this is something that is very important. Is actually the band that has played in Music Night takes the name GEMS, which is exactly the acronym for Global, Equal, Multi-Stakeholder. I think that we have to, one thing that we have to do is to make sure that whenever we speak about the multi-stakeholder model, we are very attentive on the fact that it is global and equal. There's one other point that came, by the way, also in one of the sessions that I have attended. Within a stakeholder group, we have to make sure that there's not a subgroup that monopolizes the discussion, that monopolizes the presence. For instance, one of the most various, more diverse stakeholder group is probably civil society. But civil society comes in different shapes, in different forms. There are different types of stakeholder that belong to the bigger group of civil society, and we have to make sure that also within a stakeholder group the different types of stakeholder are represented. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Roberto. We have two more quick comments. One from Roberto, and I'm going to keep it short because we want to make sure we have time for questions from the audience. And then Wow.
Thank you. I have a question, not question, actually a reflection back on the governance and the role of DCs, what we do. So it should not be just the noise that some makes, and I'm not castigating or putting some people in the corner, but actually on the impact we create. I mean, if you look at the Wout's work on standards, if you look at our friends' work on the core internet values and others, these are substantive original works and contribution to the knowledge of domain of internet. I think that should be the primary focus. I'm not very, I would say in favor of seats or titles. I'm in favor of original substantive works that adds to the knowledge for this domain of internet, that creates an impact on ground. So I think we'll have to look at, like today, as 20 years of IGF, what is our stated position as DCs on the issue of environment? Because everything we do today in the digital economy has a carbon footprint, and we know global warming and what it's doing to us. Second, what's happening on the job side, like as digital economy, we created Project Create, is how do you use technology for jobs? Every time you open the news, you see that 30 million jobs will be lost today, what I read in the morning. So it's scary at times, and I think this will boomerang into a huge mental health issue for the world. So we'll have to look at DCs and how are we addressing these issues to create an impact. A seat on the MAG or not will not make much of a difference, but what we make as a difference to the digital economy is going to be measured in terms of what we have added to the domain. I think this is where it matters for us to be impactful. Thank
Thanks
you.
so much. Well,
Yes, thank you, Judith. Whether we have the seat on the MAG or not is not the real topic, I think. I think that what we've shown in the past 2 years is that we've learned from each other what we're doing. That is one. That we'll probably be able to integrate more because of the clusters and that way become more impactful. When I think of the IGF, just going back to 2009 when I visited my first IGF, I went to as many sessions as I could, and I was so impressed with the brilliant people giving brilliant solutions to topics. But some of them still have not been solved. So we're 16 years down the line and still sometimes discussing the same sort of things. Maybe we call it AI now, but if you look one step up, it's the same issue. In other words, we have the people to make a difference, except somehow the integration of that message is not coming across in the places where it needs to land. And I think that that is the challenge of whether we get a 5-year or a 10-year or an eternal mandate for the IGF. It is about bringing people to the table that decide, I think I have to make a difference. And that will be the main challenge that the IGF faces, where it has to move from a talk shop to an influencing position. And if we can manage to do that, then we'll change the world. And that's why I advocate that our outcomes as dynamic coalitions should be heard better. And that starts with having more influence on the organization of the IGF, because that's where we bring our message across. And Avri, just to come back to one of your comments, I think yesterday, I was not really aware what you guys were doing, but you make an actual difference how you coordinate on topics and that sort of thing. So that should be heard. There's not that someone comes to tell you, I want you to do this, no, but that you send your message, we're making a difference in the internet governance world. And I think that that is the sort of message that we need to start to share actively. And we have made that start, and however we continue, but it's something we need to discuss in our group, like Marcus said, internally, and then set the steps we need to take. So that's how I want to advocate the IGF, the dynamic coalitions, and then I'll shut up because I said what I wanted to say. Thank you.
thanks so much. Well, we want to go for the Q&A, and so there's a mic set up over there. If in person want to stand up for that, I'm just going to check with my colleague because we might have some interventions online. So,
Thanks, Judith. Currently, we have 23 people taking part online and following us from everywhere around the globe. And there is a discussion going on. It was raised the attention by Carlos Afonso on a development on the multi-stakeholder structure of the internet governance in Brazil. There's a lively discussion going on. Links and further informations are provided. And there is a question raised by Emmanuel Oruk from Uganda, who would like to know more about the concept of a dynamic coalition. We are talking about what dynamic coalition are doing and what they're delivering and output and so on. But he wants to learn more about the concept and how to engage as an individual in a dynamic coalition.
Olivier,
Yeah.
and then Jutta.
Yeah, thank you, Judith. It's Olivier speaking. I'd be happy to answer that because just a couple of days ago I was asked a similar question. And the question I was asked is, what is a dynamic coalition? Why is it dynamic? Does it have a start, a beginning, and end? What do you people work on? Are these projects? Are these ongoing things? And the answer that I provided was potentially maybe one of many different answers, because we are so many different coalitions and so we deal with so many different topics. But the dynamism of a dynamic coalition is one that actually advances with times. It has it deals with issues that are related to the internet that is changing. And so the issues that we might have been working on or that we were focusing on a few years ago might be a bit they might have evolved since. And in fact, for some, thanks to the work of that coalition, the issues have advanced. It's dynamic because it's moving, but it's also open. And I think maybe that's one of the things we've not actually emphasized enough. They are all open. You don't need to pay a subscription or to queue up or to be co-opted into it by some panel that will check whether you're worthy of being in that coalition or not. It's actually open to everyone, and all of them are open. They're all very friendly. They are run by people who have years of experience in trying to get more people involved. And this is one of the big difficulties we've had, I'll be very frank, is actually attracting more people to go and join. Because, yeah, there is intersessional work going on. There's a lot of work needed. We're not dealing with simple issues that can be fixed in a matter of seconds. But it's also exciting because it kind of puts this bridge between the different IGFs. It's not just something that happens once a year. It's something that happens all the time and that continues to grow. So that's what I wanted to say about it. Thank you.
We have a quick one from Utah, and then we have Shabira and you.
Yes, because we all have been approached over the last 4 days by people who wanted to join a dynamic coalition. It's really useful to have this booth in the IGF village where everybody can meet us. But still, when it comes to how do I get to become a member of a dynamic coalition, it's a bit tricky. You go to the website, you need to have a look on the intersessional part. Even understanding that it's intersessional work the dynamic coalitions are doing is a bit difficult. But to make it short, everybody can subscribe to the mailing lists of the dynamic coalitions to get informed about the work the dynamic coalition, the respective dynamic coalition is doing. Secondly, you can apply to become a member. It's just saying, my organization or me as an individual, I want to be a member of this dynamic coalition. Then you will be listed in the list of stakeholders within that dynamic coalition. And these are the first 2 steps, and then it's up to each of the individual dynamic coalitions to set up how they work together. Some meet on a regular basis, others meet only occasionally. Some produce joint reports, some gather information of what their members have been doing in regard of the objectives of the dynamic coalition. So that is different across the dynamic coalitions. Thank you.
Thanks so much. And Dr. Spiel, I know you wanted to make a comment as well.
I think Jutta and Olivier have best described, so
Okay.
I'll forgo.
And Avri.
Yeah, quick thing. I'm really glad you put it. And just to sort of marry it to something that Wout has been saying, perhaps we've also can take on an action for the coordination group that says, we have to make that more visible. We have to make that something easier for people to find and put it out. So perhaps we should give ourselves sort of, after this is all over and we've rested, indeed make ourselves more visible by making that easier for people to find and do it.
We had a meeting with the MAC chair the day before yesterday, agreeing exactly on that approach.
Yes. Okay, so now I know our colleague over there has been waiting patiently by the mic. So I will go to him. Please tell us your name, your organization.
Thank you. So my name is Kjetil Kjærsmo. I'm kind of unaffiliated. I represent only myself. I have 3 assumptions or perhaps even observations. And one of them is that the power of internet governance is not in this room. It is chiefly with big tech. The second thing is that I was sort of a part of the Global Digital Compact process, and I noticed there were no challenges to multi-stakeholderism in there, whereas digital commons were completely removed, even though there were many excellent contributions in a dedicated deep dive. And the third thing is that polycentrism, which is part of the digital commons narrative, has been used by humanity for thousands of years. And there is a rich theory and a rich practice. So aren't we trying to reinvent the wheel here? Shouldn't we be moving towards polycentrism rather than multi-stakeholderism? Thank you.
Yeah. So very right intervention, and I think if you heard my statement, the issue is not with multi-stakeholder governance. The issue is governance or multi-stakeholder governance. I think as we see the world today, it is small number of large companies that drive the internet rather than large number of small companies, and that's the difference we have to make. And I think it's not reinventing the wheel. We should first break the wheel and create something different. And that is what the flexibility we all have in this room to speak our mind and to work towards it. And luckily, no one stops us. I mean, our reports have always come out based on inputs given by people from 60, 70 countries. And we have released them here at IGF stating that this is the way to go. What Wout told us, we should not start appreciating a problem over time. We should try to solve it. And I think that collectively we have to start. Question is when? The time is now. We are already late.
Thanks so much. And Avery?
Yeah, just one quick thing. I don't think anybody is ignoring any of the historical. I think there's a lot of admission that multi-stakeholder models have evolved from previous models, that there have been models throughout history that have given us the ideas that we're building on. So it's really not an ignoring history. It's sort of, there's a lot of parts of history that sort of had their moment and then got forgotten. And how do we take what was really valuable in those and sort of incorporate it in sort of the things that are being done now? And totally agree with you. We have to use what we've got here to indeed make more of an impression on those that do hold the power at the moment. So really don't disagree with anything except that we should use old words instead of new words.
Well, make it quick.
I will. In internet security, that a report that I've written about 5 years ago now, we identified that it's about the tragic of the commons. The internet is sort of from everybody, despite those 5, 6, 7, or 8 major companies, but it's everybody's. So when it's everybody's, nobody cares at some point whether it's secure or not, because somebody else will do it for me. And I think that is not reinventing the wheel. It's going back to the very fundamentals of how things once started thousands of years ago. And we've sort of forgot that lesson.
Thank you so much. Dr. Shabir, we're quick because I want to get you.
Yes, thank you very much, Judith. And since I have the notice from the moderator, so I'll be quick without... Power politics is my subject as a student of international relations, and we all know it is not equally distributed. And through the centuries, it has not been, and it would never be. Power that we would not voluntarily give the equal distribution of it to anyone. So while we may not have the power to change things at our will in this room, we do have the power in this room to influence things. And that's what we are doing. Dynamic Coalition on Accessibility and Disability is trying to make the internet and internet governance spaces equal for people with disabilities. And that's where the power of our dynamic coalitions, all our dynamic coalitions comes. We have the power of the people, which cannot be taken away from us. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Let me check with our online. Do we have any questions online? Okay, so we can go to the gentleman over there.
Okay, thanks. Give me the floor. I'm Henry Wang from Singapore Internet Governance Forum, so SG IGF, and also I'm the co-founder for Lingo AI. So yes, for the last 20 years, the power is not in the room. It's controlled, dominated by the large companies, definitely. But for the next 20 years, the power will be in this room. Okay, it's not because we are discussing, we're talking about that. It's because of the dynamic of the internet. The protocols are evolving. So the protocols for the people are coming. And not only coming, it's already invented and it's ready to be deployed for the power of people. So why the large company dominate for the last 20 years, even after IGF was established? because the protocols lead to the centralization of our data and also lead to the centralization of our infrastructure. But now it's different. So for the next 20 years, the infrastructure will be decentralized by the deepening network. It can be built by the community with space-ground integration network, with mesh network to be built by people, not necessarily by centralized carriers. That's on the infrastructure level. On the application level, the data currently centralized in large companies will be decentralized, and by protocols like Solid, like MetaLife, it will be controlled by every users. So so the day is coming. So a dynamic, coalition will play the important role together with NRIs.
Thank you so much, Henry. We have to have one more quick question, and then we'll go to the panelists.
It's maybe like in my comments.
Could you introduce yourself, please?
You just need not to. It's
No,
on.
no
Just
problem.
It's okay, yep. Thank you very much for all panelists. My name is Vasily Zudin. I represent the Center for Global IT Cooperation, a Russian NGO which actively works within ITU and IGF formats. And I would like to say many thanks for this, for these really interesting panels. And the main idea that dynamic coalition is very important and appreciated in the world. In Russia, we have IGF forum, youth forum, and this June they hosted the first global digital forum, which bringing together representatives from technical communities, experts, society, and government from more than 100 countries, including high level of UN and ITU representatives. In this case, we invite the dynamic coalition to collaborate with us, and the main thought and the main idea, let's work together. Thank you very much for useful dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have if you can make your answers short, because I want to go to the wrap to give you a time, or maybe best try to answer the question along with your 30 seconds of wrap up. And so I will go to Yuta for 30 seconds to wrap up and answers to these two questions.
Oh my God, that is quite difficult. Yes, okay. I do think we have heard a lot about multi-stakeholder governance. From my experience, I really would say that we have improved over the last 20 years. I'm not so pessimistic. And I think you have a dream, and I hope somehow it will become true. When I remember the World Summit of Information Society, especially from a civil society organization, we were just not at the table, more or less. We really were not heard, and that has really improved. And standing up for children's rights as a civil society organization, we are improving on not only making the children's rights heard, and their voices heard, but also their rights to be respected. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Shabir, 30 seconds.
Yes, thank you. Very difficult. So I would just go directly to the concluding statement that I have. So Dynamic Coalition on Accessibility and Disability stands ready to work with our fellow dynamic coalitions, and there are a number of subjects that one can work with. If we want the people to use the internet meaningfully, we need to not just think only about those 2.7 billion who are not connected, but 1.5 billion people who may be connected, may be in a well-developed country, may have state-of-the-art devices with the high-speed internet, but still be unable to use the internet. And I invite you to think about that situation and put yourselves in that. What would you do if you were in that situation? I rest my case. Thank you.
Dr. Vic?
Thanks very much. I just wanted to reiterate that for UNESCO, the Internet universality concept that is grounded in Rome principles, A being accessibility and M being multi-stakeholder participation and governance, is UNESCO's official position endorsed by 194 member states, which we do advocate for and we do reinforce on the ground too. And it is very much grounded in other processes and activities that UNESCO carries on, and this has been our position, and we continue working, so engaging the diverse stakeholders on the ground. And yes, for us, this is the reality, this is the present, and we will continue doing so. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Rajendra?
Thank you. As Dynamic Coalition Digital Economy, I would say we still aspire and very hopeful that we will have internet for all and livelihood for all, and we'll work on policy, capacity, and infrastructure to make it happen. Thank you.
Olivier?
Thank you, Judith. So having been an internet user for over 35 years, and having heard what we've heard here in the room today with the concerns about the future of multi-stakeholder governance and potential new avenues on how it could turn out for the better, I think that as long as we are here around the table, and as long as you are here in the room and you're present and you're able to do something about it, then we have hope. We can have hope. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Olivier. Avery?
Thanks. Starting from where Olivier stopped, I always have hope. I wanted to mention that we have a fair number of Russian groups participating within the Dynamic Coalition on Schools. And in terms of making a difference from the school's perspective, we have seen our students from the various schools going into industry, going into all the institutions and the association. And there really is a concept of making the change, making the difference, one classroom at a time, one student at a time. I meet them all the time, and they are pushing the values we try to convince them of.
Thanks so much, Avery. Roberto?
Yes. First of all, what is the value for us as Dynamic Coalition on Interplanetary Network to work with the other Dynamic Coalitions is that in order to build our model of governance, we can use the experience of all the other groups, and that is very good. On the other hand, what we can bring to the Dynamic Coalitions is to add another dimension. That means the ability of further developing the governance model to apply that to situations that are not part of the ordinary internet.
Thanks so much. Wow.
Yes, thank you. On behalf of the Dynamic Coalition Internet Standards, Security and Safety, I would say that it's a disgrace that many companies have still not deployed internet standards that are sometimes there for 20 years that would secure us immediately. So every government and big company around the world has to start procuring their ICT secure by design, because that's an economic incentive that won't be ignored. On Dynamic Coalitions, let's rock the world in 2026 and make sure that we're better heard. So thank you for this session, because we really said what needed to be said.
Thanks so much for everyone for coming to the session, and please come to our booth, and that's where you could learn more about us. So again, thanks for coming.